What is a different way that realtors can invest to get the best price for your home? But first, you're listening to Chattel Fixtures PEI Real Estate Podcast. I'm your host, David Cyrus MacDonald, a realtor with RE/MAX Charlottetown. If you want to stay in the know about real estate on PEI, then make sure you subscribe. Chattel Fixtures now has over 6,000 views and over 800 hours of watch time on YouTube, but still only 71 subscribers. If you want to hear more conversations like this, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. If you're listening on another podcast platform, please follow and subscribe there. And if you want to take it up a notch, leave us a review or a comment. Let's get into this. When I was asking around for which home stager on PEI to get on the podcast, one name came up more than anyone else, Sarah Waterfield. Specifically, Mike Thompson from Odyssey Virtual and Mary Jane Webster from RE/MAX Charlottetown suggested Sarah. I followed that up by going to Instagram, and when I saw her work, I knew she'd be great for the show. Sarah Waterfield is a CCSP-certified home stager and interior designer who specializes in working with real estate agents on PEI. She is the owner and lead stager of her company, Modern House Staging. Today, I wanted to ask Sarah about how to prepare your home for listing to get the best price and also learn a little bit more about home staging as I consider implementing it into some of my own listings. Welcome, Sarah Waterfield.
Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. So, do you often get people asking to buy the furniture?
I do, yes.
Yeah. What happens there? How often do you do it?
How often do I sell
Yeah.
it?
Will you say yes? Someone comes in, they see it, they're like, want to buy. Can this be included?
Yeah, every once in a while.
Yeah.
I do.
And what do you say?
Oh, I meant like every once in a while I will.
Oh, you will sell it. You will sell it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So but generally speaking, it's not that's not the expectation for home staging, right?
No.
And that would be a real pain in terms of getting new inventory and all that stuff. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, to get into there's this deeper alchemy of home sales and house sales and getting, the transition of people moving their lives from one place to another,
right.
Whether that be leaving a place, which has, have all that emotional attachment to it, all the excitement of going to a new place, and the challenges of all that. There's a major emotional aspect to all of this.
Right.
So when you're dealing with sellers and you're going in and home staging, this would have an emotional impact, but also with buyers, it would help them build an emotional connection to the property.
Right.
Right. As that's happening. Can you elaborate on that at all, or maybe talk about any experiences you've had with that?
Home staging is definitely, you almost have to have a degree in psychology a little bit, I find, just because you are dealing with such attachment, like emotional attachment, as you said, people have with their houses.
Yeah.
And then how to downplay the personalization that they've put into their home and guide them through the process of turning their home that they are so emotionally attached to back into a house and treating it as a product that needs to be marketed. Yeah.
Oh, that feels so cold in a way.
I
know it's not so how do you have conversations yourself with sellers very often about this?
I do, yes. So the process will start with a consultation where I'll go in and just help them figure out, if they need to make any improvements to their house from neutralizing the paint color, changing out light bulbs if they have cold light bulbs combined with warm light bulbs.
Right.
If there's any small repairs that could be done to help increase the perceived value of the home.
Right.
And then going into the next step of depersonalizing and what that looks like.
Right.
And, if somebody has a collection, say, of chickens, or if they have a room that's dedicated to their favorite rock band. So let's say, for example, it's Kiss and everything is
everything is awesome in there.
Yeah, to them,
right.
But not necessarily to everybody else. So how do we downplay that and make it so that it's kind of a neutral palette that will allow other people that are coming into the home to, instead of thinking about who lives there and kind of cultivating a story in their heads about what happens in the house and
Right.
and who owns the house. It allows them the opportunity to dream about what their life could be like.
Yeah, exactly. And ultimately for the seller, when they're at the point when they're ready to leave, they ultimately want to get the best price.
Mm-hmm.
So if this allows them, it requires, because ultimately if they're selling, this stuff is going to go
It is.
anyway.
That's right.
So if they're going through that emotional process, like I know with listings that I've had and talking with them, what I will say is, you're decluttering right now, but you're going to be moving.
Yeah.
So this is going to make it that much easier when you make that next step.
That's
And you know what I have found after that, there's like often kind of like an emotional journey that people go through. They're holding this item, especially for the first like hour of it.
Right.
And then when they get deep into it and they're sweaty, they're like throwing things out suddenly.
Yeah.
But afterwards, they're like, I'm glad I did that. And when it comes time to move, I'm that much closer.
That's right.
And I have that much less of a barrier to go through. It's funny you mentioned Kiss. This is going to be a bit of a self-indulgent story. But my band actually, we played a show for Gene Simmons once.
Really?
And after the show, he talked to us and we had a little conversation with him. He had two pieces of advice for me. One was, don't get married because you don't want someone to take half of your money.
Right.
Now that being said, my former partner, we both earned and it was okay. But so it ended up working out okay. The other one was I had a beard. I had a beard and like a red and black plaid button-up shirt. And he said, you got to shave that beard. Americans don't go for the whole lumberjack thing, which is kind of funny. But those were his two pieces of advice, neither of which aged very well in my view, but it was really entertaining. It's such a cool experience to talk to that guy. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, and thank you, audience, for allowing me to be self-indulgent. So one of the interesting things about this journey for you is kind of where you came from working as a flight attendant.
That's
and
right.
so you'd have seen a lot of hotel rooms and a lot of, probably mostly hotels. Like I assume you wouldn't be put up in Airbnbs and stuff like that, except for maybe if you chose to go on your own. But did being a flight attendant and the lifestyle of that and the job itself have any impact on your home staging practice?
Yes, absolutely. So I'm going to digress a little bit here.
Yeah, by all means. Yeah. I definitely did already deeply.
When I was flying, back before I used to fly out of Toronto, but back before Toronto was a hub, you used to have to fly out to Calgary to start your pairings.
Whoa,
and that would mean having to fly out the day before and stay overnight so that you didn't miss out on making it to the gate in time. And you could either drop like your commuting flight out for somebody if they were flying back, but if you weren't able to do it, then it meant booking a hotel last minute.
Right.
And this particular hotel, and I know once I share this, all my old flight attendant friends are going to know exactly the hotel that I'm talking about. So
I've been to Calgary, did you say?
Yes.
I've been to some hotels in Calgary. Oh, by the airport a little less so. Mine are like closer to downtown.
So like this was a hotel where when you would go in, you would immediately go to the bed and flick on the light and pull the sheets back at the same time.
Just
to make sure that there was no like bed bugs.
Right.
Or there was like, it was,
yeah,
you could still smoke in the hotels back then.
Yeah.
So, there was cigarette burns in the carpet. There was cigarette burns in the bedding. Like this is the kind of like place that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
And so I always think about that motel when I'm looking at listing photos online and I see, people.
You're thinking about booking a hotel. Imagine booking buying a house.
Like dated bedding on the beds. That's like not very
it's
well
like a
made.
sign that like, how long since they replaced this?
Yeah. Or like freshly used towels that are still on the door for when the photographer comes and you can tell like they're old and like.
Yes. That's such a good metaphor.
Yeah.
Or example of how preparing a home and staging it properly could just have a dramatic impact on the perceived value.
That's right. And you don't want potential buyers to be coming in your house and thinking about who's sleeping here, who's going to the bathroom here, like
No.
et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, you don't want to think, one
You
time I
wanna
went to a hotel room and it was still, they forgot to clean it and they gave me the key. And I remember it was a total mess. And there was like a cup full of like sunflower seed shells and there was like sunflower seeds around it. And it was just like, get me out of here immediately. It was like, that's not what you want at a hotel.
No. And so you want your potential buyers, when they're stepping into the house, you almost want it to feel like they're stepping into a hotel.
Right. So you think
or
about
an
it.
Airbnb
Or
whatever.
exactly. Yeah. Oh, totally.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You know what? There's a lot of like welcome packages with Airbnbs that they'll do, or like thank yous for coming, where sometimes there'll be, refreshments or treats waiting for them, or just a nice letter or things like that, or, fresh cut flowers, things like that just, you come in the door and you're like, ooh, this is special.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm starting to get a little sense of the alchemy here and the value deeper here. This is very educational for me.
Home staging is a lot more psychological than just making something look good.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is clicking for me. It's clicking. Thank you. Okay. So you mentioned that one of the steps in your process is meeting with the homeowners to help them get ready. So then presumably is the next step you arriving before the photos?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So after we kind of do the consultation, they get the house prepped. Ideally, that's when you would have somebody come in and do like a thorough clean of the house.
Yep.
Then staging would happen. Then the photographer gets brought in.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then after that, the vendor has the conversation with you. Do you maintain contact with them in any way prior to it, or do they check in with you, or are they more check in with the realtor?
So it depends on who makes the initial contact with me.
Okay.
If it's the realtor, then I do all of my contact with them directly.
Yeah.
If it's the vendor that makes the initial contact, then I do all the communication through them.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Very neat. Okay. So, maybe this is too obvious a question, but it might bear saying, what is home staging and how can it help sell a home? I mean, we kind of covered it a little bit, but like, if you want to, riff on that a little.
So it's increasing the perceived value of the home.
Yeah.
Depersonalizing so that it appeals to a broader range of people.
Right.
So like a good analogy is like, do you want to go fishing with a fishing pole, or do you want to go fishing with a net and potentially catch more fish?
Mm-hmm.
The same analogy kind of applies to.
Right. Yeah. Because if people are going through and they see a Boston Bruins flag and they detest the Bruins and they love the Canadians, they might just flick on through, like, forget that.
Right.
Meanwhile, this huge life decision, they're missing out based on just some little thing.
Yes.
So by increasing the pool of potential purchasers, you can increase the likelihood of getting an offer or offers in general and good offers. Because you get more customers.
That's right.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. And then as a whole, like, staging has been proven to shorten the days on market, and just you get a better price than if the house wasn't staged.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. And then, so in terms of explaining what home staging is, it is, you say preparing it, but I mean, like, the more literal answer is like moving around furniture and decor and making it look nice, and in some cases bringing in your own furniture and decor and those sorts of things. Can you like break down like the specifics of that in a more way that just like what do you do as a home stager when you're actually going in?
When I go in to stage it?
Yeah.
So I rearrange the furniture to allow the features of the home to shine. A lot of times when homes are set up for living, they're set up for daily comfort. They're not set up to, highlight a specific feature like a fireplace or a window. So when you're staging, you're rearranging the furniture so that it's highlighting those features, so that those are the things that people see first when they're looking at photos or walking through the house.
Yeah. Nice. And then you're rearranging the decor, taking some stuff down, like hiding things. Like, is that a whole part of it?
It is.
Like if they haven't decluttered enough, you would probably go in and move some stuff for them.
Yeah.
And so what is the kind of communication like with that? Usually you're just kind of like the realtors just keeping tabs with the vendor to make sure everybody's happy.
That's right.
Yeah. Because some people don't like their stuff moving around and that kind of thing. So everybody's got to be on board, I guess.
That's right.
Yeah. And some people have mobility issues too. So if like the couch is moved out of place and that's where they need it to see the TV, and then it's like, that can be really frustrating.
Yes.
So
usually I like to take in mind if people are going to be living through the selling process, taking things like that, and just if it's something that needs to be worked with, you can work with it. I usually have like a plan A through Z type of thing.
Okay. and probably when people are probably the vast majority of the time it's like, ooh, this place is nicer now. I like sitting here.
Agents hate that. They hate when their vendors will say things like, "Oh, why are we selling again?"
Yeah, maybe we shouldn't sell.
Yeah. But it's just like you get used to seeing your place a certain way when you're living there.
Yeah.
And then it's like once it's set up for staging, they come through and it's like they're seeing their house again for the first time.
Right. Yes. Right. Yeah. And then that whole emotional journey.
Yeah.
Letting go.
It is like going through grief in some ways.
Yeah.
Because you have to mourn the loss.
It's sort of like a breakup. Yeah. Yeah. And if you see like the way that grief works, it's like if you had a particular image in your brain of where the world is going, and you have certain patterns of behavior and certain, you're used to getting up in the morning and going down and that's where your bathroom is.
That's right.
And, this is where you find your coffee and that kind of thing. And then that starts changing and you have these thoughts of, oh, this, and it's like, oh, wait, that's not an option anymore. And that whole transition that happens, especially like say if you have a loved one who dies, can be a really extreme version of that. And it happens all the time. But that, this is a time when I would have spent with them.
Yeah. And
then you, as the grieving person, your job is to take that, accept as that's happening, kind of, I think, allow yourself. I'm not a therapist or anything, but just roll with me. This will be my second self-indulgent sort of explanation of the episode. Take that that feeling of like that friction of like, oh, that is not an option anymore. Taking a moment to let yourself feel it, to accept it, so that you're like, oh yeah, that isn't an option anymore. It's like, shoot,
Yeah.
But then looking forward and be like, okay, what's my life going to look like now? And how can I start to form a new version of that is maybe, even better, like, because a lot of people are moving for a reason.
Right.
And so even if it is downsizing from a family home that they've had forever because they want to have something on a single level, they don't want to be going up and down the stairs. Maybe their kids moved out and they don't want as much space anymore. And they're getting rid of things that maybe have been there for a long time and transitioning, but they're going to a place that will provide them that easier living, of less to work on, less mobility issues. They'll be able to be more free in that way. So that whole reminder of what you're doing and why you're doing it in the first place.
Yeah.
Because everybody's got a reason.
They do.
And even if it is something like, financial strain, being in this big place is going to cost more than being in this little place. It'll be less to heat, etc. That's your reason, right? That can help create that new vision
That's
of
right.
what the future can be and be like, how awesome can that be? Yeah. So there we go. There's my extended talk on grief. But it is that like all these aspects, like I do find like when I'm dealing with especially seller clients, and I've dealt with a few over the last couple weeks, and there is this journey that they're going on. And I do find, honestly, and this is just in life in general, but if someone is even, dealing with that or whatever, it's like there's so much to just sitting there with them and being present and hearing them and understanding. And then from that information that is gathered from that, try to optimize the experience for them so that it's sensitive.
That's right.
To kind of what they've been through. Like I had a person whose house sold, and the home inspector that the other realtor brought in, I kind of left it in a bit of a mess, and and it was just a real strain for her to come back in and have to deal with that.
Yeah.
And so there's all these things that, if done well and done smoothly, can be so much better. And so, but all of that is at its core, it's like an interpersonal, emotional, or, partly emotional, because there's a lot of emotion in that, and mixed with the practical and that all interacting. And you think of kind of the home staging process of part of that, aligning this kind of emotions of the people leaving to get what they want, the people coming to get what they want, and helping to frame that in a way and create the new kind of narratives that they're going to be having. I'm doing a lot of self-indulgent talking. It's all good. I do find sometimes I get audience, like I have the audience stats of what I'm watching afterwards. So you viewers, like I wouldn't be surprised if a few people tune out during that self-indulgent talk part. But hey, it's my show. You're stuck with me, audience, or not. You can leave, but maybe stay. Hopefully it's useful for the audience in some way. Yeah. So you discussed a little bit of some of the advice for homeowners preparing to sell their place or considering working with a home stager. I guess those are two different things. What would you say to the realtors who are more skeptical of home staging or don't see the value? Some people you're just never going to convince. And I heard one person say that, they find it almost like deceptive or something, because then the person comes and those things change. What do you say to realtors who are not sold on home staging, or homeowners who are not sold on home staging? Is that a conversation that you have, or you're mostly working with the ones who are sold on it? So maybe not so much.
I'm not really sure about the part where they say it feels deceptive.
Yeah, because I guess either way there'd be furniture there, and that's going to be gone when they move in. Yeah.
The only time something feels deceptive for me is when a home is shown one way online, which creates expectations for the potential buyer, and then they show up to the house and it doesn't look like
virtual home staging.
Yes.
Right. Is that the competition? Is that the competition for your work?
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah, that's interesting, because it's so. To me, it's still obvious. It'll probably get better, but it's I do find it. I'm adjusting to it too. Like when I see it, there's something about me that gets me kind of like something sneaky about
this. The uncanny valley. Your brain goes into, and it's trying to process, is this real? Is it not real? And it just makes you feel, it makes you feel weird.
Earlier CGI faces in movies. That's the same thing, right?
It is.
Right. So it's like, there's something off about this.
Yeah.
Uncanny valley. Oh, okay, that's cool. Do you know what that comes from? Like what that saying comes from? I heard, that's a cool saying.
Yeah, I don't.
There's something, there's something uncanny about this, and I'm in a valley. I don't know. I'll have to look it up afterwards. It is interesting, the kind of whole, and I think there would be some that might view regular home staging in that way, and that it's like, it's like the furniture and everything, it's going to be gone when we move in. But that's the same thing with any furniture that's there, and at least it's real.
Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like I've heard varying opinions on virtual home staging. It's an interesting one. I'm still kind of in the camp of like avoiding it, but who knows? My thoughts might evolve on that as they are, with uh, authentic home staging, not like not digital, analog home staging, physical home staging.
Yeah.
I don't know what is their term? Just home staging, I guess.
Yeah. I'm just a firm believer that if you're setting expectations for what you're going to see in person,
Right.
then those expectations need to be met.
Yeah.
And better yet, exceeded.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Totally. Especially like, yeah, the virtual home staging. I think it's like, yeah. I mean, that's a whole other conversation.
It is. Yeah.
But yeah, cool. How do you balance a homeowner's personal style and preference with the need to create a neutral and appealing space? I mean, we kind of covered this.
We did.
So when you're doing mostly their furniture and decor, or maybe you're supplementing a few pieces and things like that. Do you find, or when you are supplementing pieces, like, I guess this is sort of an artistic question in a way, how you blend it. And you're mostly using neutral color things,
right,
and that kind of stuff. Yeah, I guess just, I mean, I'm not sure how to frame this into a question, but yeah, it's almost like asking, how do you do what you do in a way, but like, how do you blend that, their personal style, the seller's personal style with what you're bringing in? Like, I mean, maybe this is just to, talk about the process a little bit. Like,
yeah, it's mostly just, like you said, neutralizing.
Yeah.
So bringing in like neutral accessories, neutral artwork, just things that are going to help balance out, like if there is a heavy color saturation or, heavy furniture, just bringing in different textures and things like that, just to balance it all out.
Cool. Nice. That one's, yeah. Yeah. I guess just broadly speaking, is there anything else that you want to cover in this that you think it's important, or that maybe things that people don't know or recognize or appreciate about home staging, or anything else you want to talk about?
I really feel like it is a real estate agent's like untapped marketing tool. That's not.
What percent of realtors do you think use a home stager? And the ones that do, how much of the time would they use a home stager?
The ones I work with are starting to do it more.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing is, like, once a realtor starts using home staging, other agents are then more inclined to start showing their homes because they know they're going to look good. And it makes their job easier.
Oh, that is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, because definitely, like, I think a big part of the listing agent's job is to make the job easier of the people, the agents working with buyers.
That's right.
Because if you've got all these, on PEI, we've got, something like 450 plus realtors, right? So, I think people that have different realtors have different opinions about whether or not that's a good thing. But for me, if I'm listing a place, it's like, okay, there's all these people out there working with buyers who could potentially bring them in here. So how can we make their job as easy as possible? Because if I'm the listing agent, I have a fiduciary duty the vendor, to the seller, to work in their best interest. So what I'm doing is trying to get them the best price possible, get it sold in the timeline that they desire, with the conditions that they desire, and try to optimize that as much as possible. And if you have realtors who have these direct, relationships with these buyers, and they are more prone to bring people in, that's a big thing.
It is. And just as far as from marketing online too, like, the majority of people now are starting their home search online. So if you have a house that looks good and is photographed well, it's going to stand out from the houses that maybe haven't been staged, haven't been professionally photographed. Yeah. And I always kind of like to think, like, the majority of first-time buyers now are millennials
Mm-hmm.
and online dating
Mm-hmm.
kind of became a thing
Oh, right. Yeah.
as they were, entering into their early adult life, and they got used to fast clicking through things.
Right.
And
yeah.
so now MLS is kind of their new dating app.
Right.
So they're looking at houses trying to find
Yep. Nope.
their
nope.
perfect
nope.
house.
Nope. Maybe. Nope. 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 Nope.
Right. So
Yeah.
you have about 8 seconds
Right.
to make that initial
Impression.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so what can you do to make sure that they're going to start clicking through more than the first 2 or 3 photos?
Right.
To then schedule a showing and go see the house, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, absolutely. And, for all my listings, I do professional photography and video, which I think, and drone footage, but I think it's, I wouldn't say it's the standard now, but I would say, I don't know if most people do, but it seems like a lot of people do that. It'll be interesting to see how home staging evolves through that process as more people take it on. And I really value taking this time to come in here, and we're in a different space today.
We are,
It's kind of a cool place. We're at Howie's, but trying this out as a different location, so we're not in my living room. But what's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
Either through my website, modernhousestaging.com, or they can find me online, either Instagram or Facebook.
All Modern House Staging?
That's right.
So Modern House Staging, that'll be in the show notes. I'll have that in the YouTube description as well. If you're on a podcast platform, it should be in the show notes there. So Sarah Waterfield, Modern House Staging, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me.